This is just a brief reminder that Misaki Shokuho will be going up very soon. I was rewatching Star Wars The Clone Wars about a week or two ago, and I remember when I was little, I used to stay up every night watching this on Cartoon Network, being so excited to see what happens next on the next episode. It was really fun for me, and I still remember it to this day. But lately, thanks to watching another series called A Certain Magical Index and the other aspects of the Toaru series, I keep finding myself asking a very strange question. Both shows cover human cloning, with Star Wars being all about the clones of a famous bounty hunter named Jango Fett, which work for the Grand Army of the Republic in a giant war, a Star War, if you will. Meanwhile, in A Certain Magical Index, the Misaka clones, or sisters as they're called, are clones of the third ranked Makoto Misaka, the third most powerful Esper, and are used in a project called Level 6 Shift in order to raise Accelerator, another powerful Esper, the top ranked, to level 6. So the question that rang in my mind is how do each of these shows cover the idea of human cloning? Because right now, in the real world, human cloning is something we haven't been able to reach just yet, not just scientifically, but also ethnically. We're not sure what we would do with that. So in this video, I wanted to try and compare and contrast the clone troopers in Star Wars versus the sister clones in A Certain Magical Index in the Toaru series. There really isn't a winner in this case. I just really wanted to do a type of comparison talking about how each show chooses to cover the idea of cloning a human being and how it's morally ethical. Now, first, I want to talk about the hosts or the DNA that has been given to create these clones. On the Star Wars side, we have Jango Fett, who is a ferocious bounty hunter that has racked up many kills and takes prisoners in, dead or alive. Meanwhile, on the Toaru side, we have a middle school girl that has the power of a railgun in her fingertips, named Makoto Misaka, the third most powerful Esper in Academy City, and a qualified electromaster. Now, the key first difference between these two is Jango Fett was asked for his DNA, and he knew full well that it was going to be used to create a giant army. He was paid, and he knew what was going to happen with his DNA. But Makoto Misaka from Index did not know that her DNA was going to be used to create an army of clones. She thought it was going to be used to try and help someone who was gravely sick. And this is the major difference between the two, because while Jango Fett knew that his clones were going to be used to fight a gigantic war, Misaka did not know that her clones were going to be used as pawns in order to shift the number one ranked Esper to level 6. So already there's a major difference between how Jango views clones and how Misaka views clones. I also wanted to add in that Jango Fett was a fully functioning adult and knew what he was doing with his life, as, again, he's been surviving for so long as a bounty hunter. But when Misako was asked for her DNA, she was just a young girl. So already she was manipulated into doing something that was rather dark without her really knowing it. And because of this, many clones suffered. And even though Django doesn't seem to have that too much of a connection to his clones except for one, because within Star Wars, we never really got to see Django interact with any other clone other than Boba Fett, his adopted clone son, but he still doesn't really seem to have a lot of compassion towards clone troopers. But Makoto considers them like her actual sisters, her clone sisters. And already we could see a big difference in how the host decides to treat their clones. Now we are going to talk about the actual clones, and before I get too far into it, I want to briefly mention that the clone troopers in the Grand Army of the Republic are not as well trained as the Misaka clone soldiers. Because while the clone troopers did receive heavy training from different bounty hunters and such, and even a few of them by Jango Fett himself, the Misaka clones were trained to fight someone that can one shot them, being Accelerator. If Accelerator touches them or even fires a rock at them, it's all over. So they were trained to have enhanced reflexes and to move very, very fast. So, in a case of a Misaka clone going up against just a normal clone trooper, you could probably expect that a Misaka clone would be able to defeat them. I remember that somebody asked me if this was going to be who would win, and I just wanted to quickly debunk that, saying that the Misaka clones would 100% wreck the clone troopers. Now, I also wanted to bring up how different people in each universe decide to view these clones, because how they choose to believe in them or how they choose to view them are dependent on who we're talking about. If we're talking about the Jedi, for example, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Shakti, Ahsoka, they consider the clones to be real people because they are, like every other living thing, connected to the Force, which is enough for a Jedi to believe that something is a real person. If they're connected to the Force, then they're real. But of course, you also have other characters in Star Wars that don't believe this. For example, Bo Katan, recently in The Mandalorian, said that she's heard Boba Fett's voice when she first met him thousands of times. And this is almost implying that you aren't special, I've seen you before. Being a clone isn't anything to ride home about. You're not unique in any way. You're not a Mandalorian. And a lot of people were kind of confused by why she said this, because she always thought that clones were better in the Clone Wars than droids. But just because a clone, a living, breathing thing, is better than a droid, it doesn't always mean that someone views them as a living, breathing, real person. And that's what I'm trying to bring up here, is that a lot of people in Star Wars and even fans bring up this moral dilemma of how sentient does something have to be considered a real person? Is this a person or is it just a drone? Is it programmed? Because, like Pong Krell said in the Clone Wars, he considers that he called every single clone by their number and not by their preferred nickname. And there are many things that can go into on this, but I also want to talk about briefly the Misaka clones. Now, in Index, you don't really see many characters interact with the clones while knowing the full story, other than Misaki, Toma, and Accelerator, but I think that their characters are enough to get a general idea, because Toma, from the very start, ever since he knew one of the clones, Misaka 10031 and 32, he already considered them human. It was just his moral right, it's his moral compass, it's what he believes, because they are alive, they talk, they have feelings. Even though they're all connected in some way, they are still real people, you know? That's what he just believes. And on the flip side, we also have Accelerator, who, for the entire Level 6 Shift project, he didn't believe that these clones were real people only until he met Last Order. And then we had, of course, him bonding with Last Order. He saves her multiple times, and he genuinely cares about her, and we get to see Accelerator's transformation from a villain into a hero. And there are a couple other characters, like Misaki, of course, she does know about the clones, but she only really knew about one named Dolly. And then there's also Heaven Chancellor, who takes care of them, but they are, of course, they just accept them as real people. And that's what the majority of the Index characters that know the full story consider these clones. There aren't really many characters that don't consider them less than human, other than, of course, the people that were manipulating them as part of the Level 6 Shift project, and Gensei, which we will not really get into here, as we never really got to see Gensei's full idea and what he thought of the clones, so I'm going to leave his opinion at the door. The last major thing I wanted to bring up is how each clone tries to express themselves and seem more like an individual, because the way clones do it in Star Wars versus the way clones do it in Index are entirely different. Because in Star Wars, you have clone troopers who get different haircuts, they use different names, they change their eye color, they change their hair color, they get different tattoos on their face, they grow beards, they customize their armor with different paint jobs to make them seem more like individuals. They don't go by their CT numbers of whatever, they call themselves Echo, Fives, Rex, Cody, all of the above. They try and express themselves in any way they can. But on the other side, on the Index side for the Misaka sisters, it seems like they are opposed to trying to express themselves and seem more individualistic. Because we saw in one of the scenes that one of the Misaka clones was trying to lose weight, and all of the other ones were mad at her because they wanted to stay the same. And that is also another thing, is that they keep using their numbers. We don't have nicknames for them other than the two special clones being Last Order and Beast Coerced, and they seem to want to stay alike. They want to be more like each other. And maybe that's supposed to be a sense of community, or maybe that's supposed to be their way, like their methodology. But it's very interesting that while the clones in Star Wars want to express their individuality, the clones in a certain magical index are almost opposed to expressing any kind of individuality in any way. All in all, I think that both series, Star Wars and Index, do really good at trying to identify how clones might try and be individuals, how people might treat them, how people around them may view the idea of human cloning and experimentation if they're considered monsters. I think that both series, in their own way, have figured out how to translate that well into a TV show. So, while, of course, the Index series chooses to use a hive mind, so all of the different clones can memorize each other, they know the memories of each other, and the clones are, again, more individualistic. It seems that while Index tries to make the clones more similar to each other, as they are, of course, all of one mind, the Star Wars versions of clones prefer to go the separate direction and make them as different as possible. Because, of course, there are many individuals that call themselves clones. Like, you also have Boba Fett, who doesn't even distinguish himself as a clone at all. And you also have Misaka Worst, which doesn't look like a clone of Misaka either. And I will make a separate video about these special clones, but for now, I just wanted to leave it at this. Hello, everyone. You have reached the end of the video. Congratulations, you reached the end of my little ramblings. I hope you enjoyed this different kind of video. This is sort of a test of how I could do videos from now on. No music, very serious. At least I tried to be, and tried to be very informative and give a perspective, because human cloning is kind of a touchy subject. We haven't been able to reach it in real life yet, and for one reason or another, the Star Wars and Index universes, I think, have covered the idea of having different clones of real people really well, and how they would express themselves and how they would be different but the same, if that makes sense. I really enjoyed making this video. It took a really long time. It took a lot of lot of editing, a lot of voice clips. Please don't let this flop. Share it with your friends, and also, of course, as you can see in the background, I am releasing Misaki very, very soon. So please look forward to playing as Misaki in the Index fighting game, the Index Mugen game that will be coming out soon. There are going to be other character teases, so make sure to watch out in her release trailer for a very certain someone popping up. And I'm not going to say exactly who, because that would spoil the surprise. But I do hope that you enjoyed this video. Please share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble for about 10 minutes. And I will see you all later. Bye bye.